Hello and welcome to another Shadowverse video. So today we're checking out a unlimited DragonCraft deck. This is a pretty stock standard old style kind of aggressive DragonCraft deck. It can struggle a little bit in the rune matchup these days, but other than that, this is still a really solid deck. Obviously it is a reasonably legendary heavy deck, as that tends to be a pretty decent core for this. There are other dragon decks that I do plan on kind of covering eventually, but this one is just solid, easy to use, and if you're a long time player you probably already have most of these cards, as they were all pretty much staples except maybe Neptune, which is really the only one that some players won't have, but isn't also a necessary card. You can run other things in the early game to kind of mitigate that and recover from it. So it's a really solid deck and I recommend giving it a go, but we're going to get right into it and check it out. So first game, Dragon versus Rune. Not a surprise, I mean Rune is everywhere. Both unlimited and rotation, Rune has definitely become the most powerful deck, I would say. Or at least right up there. Based on my playtesting so far, it's the cheapest, most accessible deck along with one of the stronger decks, so it definitely makes it easy for anyone to pick up. This dragon deck though does do okay. You just really need to get that good early swarm going so you can deal enough damage by the time you reach turn 6 or 7 that you can just kind of win the game and hope that they haven't managed to max spell boost. The guy who summons 3 other things, I forgot what his name, the Shinigami card or whatever it is, the really crazy one, as that's really your only big threat, because if they can drop that and drop, say, Dimensional Shift, you really are screwed, but outside of that card, you're usually pretty fine. So you are definitely targeting really early game cards as much as possible. I got a little awkward of a hand here. Fortunately, we can make up for it a little bit with the White Frost and the Doting Dragoneer, but it's still awkward. At least we got the Omen for 5 and the Dragoon for 6, which is at least a pretty decent chunk of damage. And will actually provide some decent removal here. Paper Shinigami though is kind of going to ruin any major plans we have going, so we did lose the Doting, but we do get to at least take this out, deal some damage, and set ourselves up for a nice Dragoon next turn. We'll only be a couple of damage short from lethal next turn. So all we need to do is 2 more damage and hope there's no wards. Wards are really the only thing that can cripple us here, but worst case we have to go for the Omen and try and get around things that way. So Demon Caller, not a problem. Shinigami Summons, also not a problem. But Traditional Sorcerer, there's our problem card. So it's going to make things a little more awkward now, as they got really good overall removal, and we need a good way to deal with this. Fortunately, it doesn't look like an Evo would necessarily be needed, as we can easily remove this. Although I probably should have hit the 4-2 with that and then used my basic effect, but that could have gave us a little bit better value there. Although they did make the huge mistake of magic missiling that. That was a really bad decision. Definitely not what you want to do, as that puts them in a very vicarious place now, although they can still easily take this out. So it's really going to come down to how this turn plays out, and if that's all they have for turn 6, our turn 7 Dragoon is enough to close the game without too much issue. Definitely was a tight one there with cards. We were running a bit short, but hopefully with a better draw engine you can draw a bit better. Now for the next game, we are playing up against Shadowcraft. Shadowcraft in Unlimited can kind of be a little bit of anything. My actual next video I've got planned to release for Shadowverse should be Shadowcraft Unlimited, as there are quite a decent amount of variants and you can do some fun stuff with them if you mess around a little bit. It's actually a really fun deck to play and reasonably consistent, so I definitely recommend giving Shadow a go too, as it's a lot of fun in Unlimited. So the most annoying card to come against, Pudding. Definitely not a fan. Turn 1 Puddings are quite annoying for this deck. Obviously without getting their bonus effects it's not as bad, but they're definitely not a fun thing. So we've been locked out of doing anything with this 1-3 now. At least White Frost, we can get rid of the 2-1. That'll kind of buy us some time. Draw going, because why not? And now we got the Bryon and Doting Dragoneer combo. That's actually one of the better combos you can get, as it does allow you to flood the board with basically 2 cards. If with the Goblin we can actually do it with 3 for turn 5 if we go down that route. So disdain, remove, and we'll just set up the 3 here. It's a solid card. We can finally get some damage in, and we've got the hand spurs for when we need it. Shinobu. It's an interesting one. It's actually a card I would like to play but don't have any of, as it's very solid. We do now need to take care of that, which is going to waste some value we get, but we're still going to get a really nice board off this. That's going to be a little bit difficult to remove, as we effectively flood the board. And I should have played the Goblin first. That was completely my error. If I played the Goblin first, I would have got the extra buff on it. Not that against this board it makes a huge difference, as they're all basically, you know, 1 health mostly. So you can deal with them reasonably well. It just would have been more convenient. So we do need to take this, and Disciple is one of the better ones. We've got a 1 in 4 chance of hitting something that I wanted, which we did, but it was about 50-50 on hitting anything good. So we do now need to ping stuff away, because it's the only way to deal with stuff. And now I do plan on wiping this. So I took the path that led to the best result for me, leaving Shadow with no cards other than the ones in hand. Hopefully we can make a nice recovery. We have got Dragoon next turn, if we want it. Although Shadow Reaper is not a good card to deal with. It's definitely one you don't want to be forced to deal with, as its ambush is a pain. So I did go for the Dark Dragoon. We've also got the Ivory, so we can actually take a draw here. And Dragoon can't actually be attacked, so that's going to be a positive. It's mostly going to be reliant on, of course, spell damage or effect damage. Foot in Candle Crown, or a Descent into Madness into hand. Descent into Madness, that's not bad. They did do a good amount of damage there, but Neptune coming in clutch for us. It's not enough to go for lethal, but we can at least get rid of this board, although I could have done it better if I had half a brain and actually wiped out the Reaper first. That was a terrible misplay on my end, as I could have got extra damage in. But in the end, it didn't end up mattering too much, as we still get the Omen of Disdain here. Although again, I could have done a better play and went for the Servant as well and got the extra draw off it. That would have got me a little bit better value. But we're very close to lethal now, so we're not really too worried. Dragon's Handspur plus the Neptune is lethal from hand. We just need to make sure there's no wards on board. It looks like that shouldn't be too much trouble. And not even needing the Neptune now. Handspell. We've had multiple ways to go for lethal from this board, but we took one of the easier ones, just wiping them out with a couple of cards. So this is definitely a deck that does really well. If I hadn't misplayed in the Shadow game most of the time, I could have done a lot better. I would have had at least some decent recovery options and some pretty easy ways to deal with other things on board, but outside of that, we did pretty well with it. It stood its ground and still held up pretty nicely. Rune, again, can be a little bit of a 50-50 matchup for this deck, as you do have to get a nice opener to actually deal with Rune, and you've got to hope that they semi-brick. You don't want them to have godly hands, because it's just impossible to keep up with the spell boost that they can get on certain cards. But overall, for the deck that this is, it's pretty decent. I could recommend it to you guys if you're interested in playing some Dragon. I do have some other Dragon decks that I definitely want to bring out. There are some really cool boost dragons, basically like the Playpoint Gain dragons and stuff like that, that look interesting, along with, of course, discard dragons, which still do okay in the unlimited meta. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe. You'll find the deck list in the description below. Until next time, guys, see ya.